Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's webinar, the Aging Initiative MCC Scholars Program Information Session. This webinar series is coordinated by the Aging Initiative, which is an NIA-funded initiative that bridges the expertise and leadership of two powerhouses for research on multiple chronic conditions, the Healthcare Systems Research Network and the Claude D. Older Americans Independent Centers, or as we call them, the Pepper Centers. The Aging Initiative is led by Dr. Jerry Gerwitz at the University of Massachusetts and Myers Healthcare Institute, along with co-PIs Elise Adams and Jay Magaziner. My name is Leah Hanson. I'm an embedded researcher at HealthPartners Institute of Minneapolis, and together with Heather Whitson at Duke University, we co-lead the Aging Initiative Career Development Core. We're also joined by two members of the Aging Initiative Insights and Perspectives from Patients and Care Partners panel, or the IP4, Adeline Mitten and Maria Pellerano, who will be providing more background related to the stakeholder impact of the MCC Scholars Program application. Due to the number of registrants for today's webinar, we have placed the phone lines on mute to reduce audio feedback. However, we welcome and encourage audience participation using the chat function. If you have technical or logistical questions, we ask that you submit those in the chat to Ali DeRoche, who will be monitoring the discussion. Just a reminder that we are recording the session and we'll be posting the recording to the Aging Initiative website later this week. All right, let's jump in. Next slide. As I mentioned, the Aging Initiative brings together the HCSRN and the OAIC networks to create a national research that supports an interdisciplinary research agenda that's focused on older adults with multiple chronic conditions, or MCCs for short. The goal of our initiative really is to address and help fill the knowledge gaps we have regarding health and healthcare for these understudied patients, those with MCCs. Next. So why MCCs? The most common chronic condition actually experienced by older adults is multimorbidity, or the coexistence of multiple chronic conditions. And we know the majority of people that are older than 65 have two or more chronic medical conditions. And these patients are historically have been excluded from clinical trials. So we have a gap in guidance on how best to care for people that have more than one condition. And in addition to the gap in knowledge, we know that the heaviest users of healthcare are those with multiple chronic conditions. So when we look at Medicare beneficiaries, about 12%, the people with more than 6 MCCs account for 12% of the beneficiaries, but a majority of the acute Medicare costs, about half of spending altogether and on hospitalization. So it's really important to improve outcomes and costs and gain more knowledge about people living with multiple chronic conditions. Next, please. So this is a quick view at our organizational chart of the Aging Initiative, again, led by Jerry Gerwitz, who's supported by a fabulous steering committee and external advisory committee. One of the key components of the Aging Initiative is our connections with our patient and care partners, or our IP4 panel, which is connected in all that we do, both in the steering committee and across all 3 of our cores. This core that runs a program is the career development with Heather and I. We also have a core for methods, measures, and data development, and for research innovation, translation, and dissemination. Next. So to date, the MCC Scholars Program, this is our 7th cohort of scholars. So we have trained 70 scholars or early career investigators from a real wide range of expertise, research interests, and skill sets. We've held more than 74 webinars and conducted 6 of our MCC Scholars workshops, which is our kickoff event. You'll hear more about that in a minute. Next. So what is the MCC Scholars Program? So the goal of our program is to support emerging leaders of early career investigators with an interest in aging adults with multiple chronic conditions. This year, we will select up to 16 scholars. The Scholars Program begins with an in-person experience where travel is covered. This year, the in-person workshop will be April 23rd to 25th of next year, held in conjunction with the annual meeting of the OAICs. Over the course of the year, after this in-person kickoff event, the scholars will participate in 6 virtual webinars that are composed of 4 different curricular elements. And I'll speak to those a little bit when we get to the next slide. But in addition to the curriculum, this last year, we instituted a formal mentoring program, which will be included as well in the Scholars Program. So each scholar will be paired with senior scientific members and also members of our IP4 group. And the scholars will be put in small groups together based on shared research interests. And again, the goal of the program is to nurture and support a cohort of emerging leaders in MCC research. Next, please. Just a bit more description about the curriculum of our program. We'd like to look at this as kind of our stool with 3 legs. So the first leg is the significance of multiple chronic conditions, why it's important. The second is enabling meaningful patient caregiver engagement. So that's with interaction with our IP4 panel, and also not just connections, but sort of how to do this, guidance and how to meaningfully engage. The third leg of our stool is resources and tools for MCC researchers. So this is methods, tools, and then the seat of our stool, just a basic of any scholar curriculum, is career development. And one of the great things about the Aging Initiative is the vast network of scientists around the country that it brings together. Next. So this is an example. So again, in addition to the in-person meeting, there's 6 virtual webinars. Typically 3 of them are large groups. So this would be a public, large type lecture. And 3 of them would be a scholars only, smaller, more interactive session. And so this would be in addition to the mentor meetings that scholars would have. This is just an example of a curriculum kicking off in April with an in-person workshop, an example of in the spring having a public lecture attending about a methods topic, in the summer, a small group around career development, in the fall, a larger lecture around the significance of MCCs. In the end of the year, we have a tradition of getting together all of our scholars. Again, we've trained 70 to date, and doing peer mentoring at a scholars reunion. In the early next year, a large seminar topic on health equity or related topic. And then finalizing the experience with something that's like a resource swap, where scholars share information and tools and to help each other and share what they've learned. And now I'm going to hand it off to Heather, who's going to continue talking about our program, starting with the mentorship.
Great. So the mentorship program is the newest component of the MCC Scholars Program. So if you talk to other people who participated in the program several years ago, they might not know about this part. But if you talk to the people who are participating in the program this year, I think they'll have really good things to say about it. So what we designed here, and this was added as a component to the MCC Scholars experience based on prior feedback, that the scholars would love even more opportunity to sort of talk informally outside of the formal didactic curriculum, looking for more opportunity for sort of networking, and also feedback and mentorship or guidance from senior people in the field that was really responsive and tailored to things that they needed at that moment or during the year that they were participating. So What happens is each MCC scholar is placed in a group with a handful of other MCC scholars. Most of the groups have 3 or 4 MCC scholars in them. And then in addition, each group has 2 sort of scientific advisors that are selected. Usually one of them is sort of a methodological or statistical expert, and another that is a content expert in MCC research. And then in addition, one of the IP4 members who are usually patients or care partners that have lived experience with multiple chronic conditions. So this group of people kind of together throughout the year meet in a sort of defined format. So next slide. So this is giving an example of what that experience would look like from one scholar's perspective. So you would start out in April, and you would have, in April is when we have our in-person meeting. So there's no online mentorship meeting during April. It's an in-person peer mentoring experience, and the first time that you meet the other scholars in your cohort. In May is when the online Zoom-based mentoring meetings begin, and the first time you meet with your full scholar group, so that'll be 2 or 3 or 4 MCC scholars, plus your triad of mentors, the 2 science mentors and the IP4 mentor. And in June, we have what we call a 3-on-1, which is where your triad of mentors is meeting just with you. And then in August, it would be the full group back together again. November and December is when we have kind of in a festive holiday spirit, we have the scholars reunion, where not only is everyone in your cohort, but all of those 70 people that we've trained in the MCC Scholars Program over the past 7 years are also invited back. And frequently, many of them do come back to this sort of webinar, and we do small groups and peer mentoring. Then there's a couple of office hours during the winter. These are set up as sort of optional, but the mentors will have defined times that they're present and available for you to drop in and ask specific questions. And then finally, there's a full group meeting again together before the year concludes. The way that we've sort of come up with this, and as I said, this is our first year rolling this out. So it's, you know, we may tweak based on the feedback from this year. So far, the feedback has been very positive, and one of the things that we've really tried to balance is recognizing that through this program, we're very aware that you are not getting any of your effort per se covered to participate in this program. So we want to make sure that every hour that you spend doing anything in this program is viewed as very high impact, very high yield, exactly what you need, and that we're not requiring you or asking you or expecting you to do more than is reasonable. So the time investment is really kept to something like 1 to 2 hours a month, other than that in-person 2-day meeting where we come together in April. And that is really trying to sort of balance making this a meaningful experience for you, while also being respectful of your time and not expecting too much. I think I've covered all this. So generally, the commitment that we ask that there would be 4 1-hour meetings that are required, and then the 2 others that are these kind of optional and curriculum as well. The meetings that happen in the mentoring experience are really scholar-led. So each scholar group sort of determines together how they'd like to make the best use of these meetings and arranging them. Next slide. This is just some of the feedback that we've received so far in our first year of the mentorship program, and I think you can tell from some of these quotes that people are enjoying it. The mentorship team provided tangible, actionable suggestions on possible grant mechanisms and speaking opportunities. Another person said that having the patient advocate in the group was helpful, and noted that this is certainly a unique aspect of this MCC training program. and that they had learned a lot from hearing about those experiences and opportunities of how to involve partners in their own research. Another person says, my mentors were fantastic. They answered so many questions related to aging research, patient engagement, partnership, as well as questions just generally about an academic career, career progression, a really important thing at this stage of my career to get that kind of external feedback. So the nice thing about this is these are people that would be outside of your sort of usual mentorship team at your own institutions, and just expand your network. Next slide. And so sort of the intangible benefits of participating in this program, we've sort of told you what the year is like. In addition, there are opportunities for grant review. Mentors have agreed to do that with enough time and runway to do that. Leah and I are also happy to do that as the leaders of the program, and often your peers get into sort of grant review groups. There's also lots of opportunity for peer collaborations. We have several examples of publications or funded projects that grew directly out of the MCC Scholars Program. There's great visibility to senior leaders when you attend that annual meeting, and we pair it with the Pepper Center meeting. You're sort of identified as a person who was selected to participate in the MCC Scholars Program, and it's a great way to meet senior leaders across the country. The many networking opportunities, and also we always hold the Pepper Center meeting in Bethesda so that many of the NIA representatives can easily attend. And that was one of the reasons that we decided to pair our MCC Scholars meeting with the Pepper Center meeting too, because that's such a wonderful opportunity to be able to connect face with the people that you're emailing about your K Award applications and other things, and spend a little time sort of sitting at dinner or lunch with them. And then, as we mentioned, it exposes you to two sort of networks of, I'll say, future job opportunities in the HCSRN and the institutions that are affiliated with the Pepper Center. Slide. So hopefully we've convinced you that it's a worthwhile thing, and we would love to see your applications to be a scholar this year. I'm just going to run through quickly sort of some of the eligibility. So we do require that you have an MD, PhD, or equivalent degree. So that can be essentially any terminal degree that we've had DOs, doctors of audiology, DPT, sort of you name it. If it's a doctorate in whatever your field is, that qualifies. If you're not sure, feel free to ask. There needs to be evidence of commitment to research in a field that is relevant to MCCs or aging. Notice that we say they're in a field that is relevant to. So it may be okay that you've never published a paper yet that says anything about multiple chronic conditions or multimorbidity or aging. But if you're in a field and you're here because you want to incorporate the idea of multiple chronic conditions, patient complexity, multimorbidity, aging into your research, you're still in the right place. Preference will be given to applicants who are in sort of earlier stages, meaning not yet received an R01 or tenure, or if you've attained these milestones only very recently. So that doesn't mean you can't apply if you have already attained those, but it is generally considered a sort of earlier stage investigator program. We do ask, so as to make the best use of the people who get these slots, that you commit to attending the April 2025 workshop in person, and that you commit to attending 6 webinars and participating in the mentorship program. We would also strongly encourage applications from trainees or early stage investigators who come from groups that are underrepresented in research. This includes women, ethnic or racial minoritized groups, people with disabilities, people, there's rurality. There are defined criteria of this on the NIH website. Applicants who wish to collaborate with other investigators in MCCs, or who have research activities that could be enhanced by using the data resources that are available through, for example, the Healthcare Systems Research Network or the OAICs network. In your application, it's helpful to make it clear how you are looking to either collaborate, connect to other investigators with particular expertise, or how you're looking to potentially use some of those resources. Importantly, and this is a change in the last few years, MCC scholars don't have to be affiliated themselves with either the HCSRN or the OAICs. In fact, in our last cohort, I think it was the first time that maybe we passed the 50% mark, where just over 50% of our scholars were not affiliated with either a Pepper Center institution or the HCSRN. Next slide. So you can find the application right there. There's the link and the QR code. You'll be asked, we have tried to keep, again, we've being respectful of your time and the fact that this is not giving you any cold hard cash. It's giving you an experience. We've tried to avoid making this a super onerous application process. So the only thing that you'll be asked is some demographic and institutional information about yourself, your NIH style bio sketch, and then it's short responses, 400 words or less, sort of short essays. And these are the kinds of things you'll be asked to describe your prior accomplishments or evidence that you have the potential to lead in collaborative research, how your research might have an impact on individuals who are living with multiple chronic conditions, and how participation in this program is going to contribute to your long-term goals and career. And as I said, it's helpful to be very clear about how connection to other people who study MCCs or would bring this expertise, how this might launch your research agenda to the next level, or how you might utilize some of the connections to HCSRN or OAIC resources. Next slide. All right, so our review process is a little bit different than sort of straight review processes. Again, one of the things about the Aging Initiative is that we truly believe that research is better when it is influenced and led not just by researchers, but by the people who we intend to benefit with the research. So we really try in the Aging Initiative to incorporate the patient and care partner perspective in everything that we do, and that includes the selection of who becomes an MCC scholar, and we do the same thing in the development project award programs that are also run by the Aging Initiative. So your application will be reviewed not just by somebody who is a scientist or researcher who does work in this field, but it will also be reviewed by two of the IP4 reviewers or individuals who themselves have a lived experience as a patient or care partner. And the reviewers will score different sections of the application. So we're not really asking the IP4 reviewers to review exactly the same thing as the content expertise MCC researcher reviewers. But it's important to sort of, many of you probably are used to submitting things that are being reviewed by a scientific expert in that field. You may not be used to submitting things that are being partly reviewed by patients or care partners. Although, as I said, we think that this is an incredibly important thing and helps ensure that we're making good use of the work that we do in the Aging Initiative. So next slide. So to talk about that, I'm now going to introduce two of the IP4 representatives who will give you a little bit more insight into what exactly kinds of things that they're looking for in these applications and some other information about the IP4. You'll hear from their introductions that these two IP4 representatives have substantial lived experience about multiple chronic conditions and being a care partner. Also, quite a bit of professional experience in this area too. Our IP4 panel, I would say, varies in how much their professional experience was in the scientific or academic realm, but all of them bring this important lived experience. So I'm going to introduce Edeline Mitten and Maria Pellerano. So Edeline Mitten is the director of the Office of Continuing Medical Education at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University. Her personal experience as a caretaker for an aging parent is what has fueled her passion for raising awareness about the challenges faced by older adults with multiple chronic conditions and reducing health disparities for vulnerable communities. Maria Pellerano is currently the primary caretaker for her spouse and a former caretaker for her mother, father, and other relatives with multiple chronic conditions. She is also involved with PCORI as an ambassador and a grant reviewer. As a member of the faculty at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in the Family Medicine and Community Health Department, she's an educator and a researcher assisting with academic colleagues and research projects that engage patients and families, especially those from low-income, minority, or low literacy populations in patient-centered outcomes research. So with that, I'm going to ask Edeline and Maria to take it away.
Slide. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. So my name is Edeline, so I'm here on behalf of IP4. So, and of course, the mission of IP4 is to collaborate with you researchers like you to improve the care of and the lives of older adults with multiple chronic conditions. So I want to give you a little background story so you can understand my story. So you picture an older adult, let's call her Anna. So she has diabetes, arthritis, heart disease. So like many others in her situation, she's navigating appointments with multiple specialists, managing an overwhelming number of medication and trying to decipher conflicting advice. Her care is fragmented, burdensome, and sometimes feels like it's working against her priorities rather than with them. So that was my mother, and her story is not unique. It's the reality for millions of older adults living with MCCs. So this is why I ended up being her caretaker. This is why I was her caretaker. And this is why I got involved in IP4. And this is why IP4 exists. So it's to ensure that research and care system reflect what patients like her truly need. So a bit more about IP4. As I mentioned, we are a group of about 9, I think, caregivers and patients representing diverse backgrounds and experiences and perspectives. We spread all across the United States. So we are reunited, though, by our shared commitment to improving care for older adults with chronic conditions. We have found that working with researchers like you in conducting and disseminating your work, it directly impacts the lives of patients and families. So this includes from whatever identifying research questions that matter to most patients, and while we review your full application and providing feedback on their potential impact. So we found that this population, like older adults population, is one of the most complex and vulnerable populations. So I think you will have the opportunity by working with us to shape your research that address this challenge heads on. We want to ensure that your projects focus on issues that matters most to patient and family, things like care coordination, on reduce unnecessary burden, and improving the quality of life. So as part of our work, we carefully review full application to assess their potential for real-world impact. So our goal really is to help you design and conduct the research that leads to actionable patient-centered outcomes. So I feel like we are also part of the reviewing team. So as we're not just review the application, but part of the whole team, because we are a critical component of the Aging Initiative infrastructure. You know, we meet with the steering committee, the advising the Aging Initiative leadership on strategies. We are an integral part of the process, so please pay attention to the questions, especially when it comes to regard to MCCs. Maria will provide you with more details on that, but focusing on potential to make a real difference in the lives of patients. So because our feedback will highlight whether the proposed project addresses pressing challenges that or overlooked needs in the MCC community. So our role is multifaceted. So when we partner with you, we can partner with you. We are at every stage of your research journey. So whether in the design stage, in the application review stage, in the dissemination and communication stage. So we look forward to partnering with you and ensuring that everything works out. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing your incredible work that you'll be doing in this field. So Maria?
Thank you very much. So I'll tell you very quickly about myself in terms of my caretaking experiences. I started caretaking when I was in my early 20s. My father was diagnosed with metastatic cancer, and it was at a time in the 1980s when there wasn't much known about cancers, certain metastatic cancers, and they often just sent you home. And that is a very hard thing for families to accept, that someone is just being sent home and told, get your affairs in order and, prepare your family for your death. My dad was in his mid-60s when this happened, and I was as I mentioned, in my early 20s. And that led me on this journey of caring for family members. I was brought up in a strong ethnic background that believed that you took care of your own family. And for many years, I did that as best I could, but I too had my own family and I was working full time. So there were many challenges about being a caretaker in doing that. And many of the IP4 members fit in that box, that same sort of situation. We have had a lot of different experiences. Some of us are also patients. I am now, as I am aging myself, we all are aging actually, but as I am aging, I am now someone with multiple chronic conditions. And so it has been quite a journey, and one that I bring all of that experience to almost all the work I do for the Aging Initiative. So, but I want to really focus on the application here. So what the IP4 reviewers are looking for, and we meet regularly, the IP4 group meets regularly, and we actually discuss these, not the specific applications, but our specific understanding of what people were applying and talking about. So these things are very important on this slide that we have mentioned here. So I'll just try to describe them a little more fully. So description of your experience engaging patients, care partners, and family members. Now, don't worry, if you haven't had that experience yet, we have another bullet that covers you. But if you have had that, it really helps to describe this. And I know the word limit is pretty strict, the 400 words. So you need to be very clear. But if you have had any experience in any way, you should try to describe that, because it's really helpful for the reviewers, both the scientific reviewers, because they're looking that they're trying to understand if you're really going to be sort of that next generation of MCC researchers for an aging population. And we're trying to understand that your interest in patients and care partners and family members and others who care for people with MCCs is genuine. So it's It's both those things. If you do not have experience, we want you to tell us how you envision this would fit into your research going forward. It's really important to everyone involved with the Aging Initiative that all of our MCC scholars are interested in working with patients and care partners and others at some point. And you want to therefore acknowledge the importance of the patient and care partner voice in the research agenda and in your research agenda. You don't have to have a complete blueprint of how you're going to do that, but you need to at least articulate that on some level and how you expect that it will help your work going forward. And then how your work, if successful, would benefit the lives of people with MCCs and their care partners. This is probably really, really, really important, because if you don't address this question, how your work will benefit the lives of people with MCCs, it's very likely we cannot bring you on, because at least the IP4 members will not be as enthusiastic about your work, or your proposal, or I guess application, than others. Next slide. So as everyone has previously mentioned, the IP4 members are sort of integral and engaged in all aspects of research in working with the Aging Initiative, both not just the MCC scholars, but even in our conversations with the scientists who are part of the Aging Initiative. So we identify opportunities to improve care and outcomes. So for example, we have reviewed tools that people traditionally use because they're validated for caretaking, for example, and given that feedback back to the scientists about the various tools and why we think they could be different. And these are tools that are talking to care partners, actually, and we reviewed those and provided feedback on those care partner tools, to try to understand the burden of taking care of someone, which is hard to really, personally, I think it's hard to quantify, but I am a qualitative researcher, so I'll say that right up front. But I think it's very hard to quantify caregiving experience. Train and support new scientists dedicated to studying MCCs. That is why we are so involved with the MCC Scholar Program. And then facilitate research of high value to patients and providers. That is really our ultimate goal, is to make sure that the research that's being done on patients or about patients and is really, and providers, sometimes clinicians, a lot of research affects our clinician partners, that they have been participating at some level in the research so that it does have value to them and the results are usable for them. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I think, are we ready for questions? Is that the next slide, if I remember the slides correctly?
I think we have some frequently asked questions. Oh, well, it looks like next we're telling you dates. So maybe the most frequently asked question is, when is it due? It is due January 10th at midnight. Again, keep in mind, this is a pretty short and sweet application. And the scholars get notified by Valentine's Day, February 14th. That workshop that is required is April 23rd. You'll fly in the evening of April 23rd. There's a kickoff dinner that you won't want to miss. And then the 24th and the 25th there in Bethesda. Next slide. Here's a couple of links where you can get more information. And I know we have some questions in the chat. I think there's an FAQ slide coming up, and we'll see if we address some of those with the FAQs, and then we'll have time for questions. Here are the FAQs. So as I think we've already noted, do you already have to be doing research that's about older adults and aging? No. You just have to make the case for why participating in this program will benefit your research. And in fact, sometimes that's a great case to be made, that you're coming in from a different field and potentially have the opportunity to go back and be an ambassador to your own field about multiple chronic conditions. We frequently get questions of people saying, I'm in the last year of my PhD, or I'm in the last year of medical school, can I apply? Unfortunately, we kind of have to hold the line that you have to hold that degree at the time that you apply. But apply in the future once you have that degree if you don't have it yet. International researchers. So unfortunately, we don't have the budget to be able to support people who are needing international travel to come to the meeting. But if you are in a position to support your own travel to come and be a part of the in-person meeting, and you know someone who lives in a different country, we have had international scholars before. And I think that also answers the question about permanent residence and U.S. citizenship. I believe that we are able to support that, since again, we are not providing salary or effort here. We're supporting just an experience. If you have previously applied for the MCC Scholars Program and you were not accepted, does that count against you? It does not count against you at all. So I want to make it really, really clear that every single year that we've run this, we've been delighted to receive so many strong applications from so many people, many more than we had slots to be able to offer. We are offering 2 extra slots this year, so we'll be accepting 16 scholars, we hope, as opposed to in past years where we had even a smaller number of slots. So we hope this year to be able to offer a few more slots, but we actually love to get repeat applicants. And many of our scholars who have participated in the program were accepted on their second or third time applying. And that really just represents the fact that we always have many more people applying than we can accommodate. And at least half to 2/3 of the applications that we receive are really highly qualified, and we wish that we could have you all at the same time. What oftentimes comes down to making the decision is trying to make sure that we have that each cohort, because each cadre that we do each year get sort of tight and close with each other and form their own group. We really try to make each year's cohort diverse in terms of a balance of MDs and PhDs and people from different geographic locations and people in different disciplines and people that bring different perspectives and life experiences. So if you didn't get accepted in a past year, it very likely had nothing to do with anything wrong with your application. And we do try to make room for people who are past applicants. Next slide. Okay, so now we're to the questions and comments. I'll ask other people to weigh in too. The question about is a Pepper Center RL5 or Rec Scholar eligible? Yes, you are eligible. There's a question that I'm going to have to ask if anyone else knows the answer to this about. I'm a tenure track investigator in the intramural program at the NIA, and are you eligible? I would say we might have to just clear that with our sponsor and your employer, which are one and the same. So I don't know, unless this is a question that's come up before. Leah, Ollie, do you remember?
Yeah, I think we'll need to check.
Yeah, we can verify. That's a good question. We hope you're eligible. Any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. Ollie or Leah, did I forget anything?
I think there's a question about citizenship.
Yes, and my understanding is we are happy to accept applications from non-citizens. If you are currently living outside the US, you will have to help with covering your airfare because we're not budgeted this year for international airfare. But we are able to accept applications from non-US citizens since we are not employing you or providing you effort.
We have a new question. How many applications do you receive on average? And would you say maybe 50 to 60 applications?
That's about right. Yep.
But that said, not to discourage you to apply because of that. We really tried, as Heather mentioned, to make this really a low bar for the amount of time it will take you to complete the application. So it's very short and sweet and simple, we hope.
There's a question about if an application is not accepted, do they get feedback? Given the quantity that we have received in some years, we have not been able to provide sort of like a summary statement for each application. That said, if you are not accepted and you have a question, you can also reach out to Program OALI, and we will do our best to provide information back. And sometimes the answer is just simply your application was well received, well scored. Apply again next year. It might not be that specific criticisms were given, and it has as much to do with trying to create that sort of balanced cohort in any given year. Sometimes we can give people feedback about if there was something that didn't come through clearly in your application. What resource from applicants' employment might help assure a successful completion of the training? That's a great question. I do think that it's useful if your mentors at your own institution are certainly that they're aware that you're participating in this program, partly just because if you get accepted to the program, you should put it on your CV, you should tell your department chair, you should, as you would if you sort of got selected for anything that's a selective program. It's certainly good to let those people know. The only time that they really probably need to grant you is the 2.5 days to be in person in Bethesda in April. The rest of it, generally, people can find an hour or two in a month to do their webinars. Is preference given to MDs or pharmacists to interact directly with patients? I'm an epidemiologist, and while I believe my research has translational value, it may not directly translate into clinical practice. Yeah, that's a great question, and we really try not to give preference to the clinicians, because we completely agree with you that all research all research in the health space certainly has relevance to patients, and we see ourselves as wanting to be good stewards of the research dollars that we have available to us, no matter what kind of research we're doing in the public health or clinical health space. So we really try to have a nice balance of clinician researchers and non-clinician researchers. And sometimes it can be the most valuable, I would say, for those people who don't interact daily with patient populations to participate in a program like this and have the opportunity each month to meet with patients and care partners, but also to learn specifically how, even if you don't have direct access to patients in your own clinical practice, how you can leverage networks like IP4 and others to incorporate them into your research in various creative ways, and how to do that thoughtfully and respectfully and effectively.
Yeah, I think for data-only studies, I think that patient voice is still really important for which outcome is important to them. And there are many methods related to MCCs for designing your analysis and data related things that can be really important.
Yeah, I don't know. There's the question about letters of recommendation or letters of support required, accepted, and they're not. There's no requirement for a letter for this.
And there's no place to upload one either, so. And thank you, Ollie, who's put a link in the chat to just an example of who our scholars have been in the past. You can see what their topics of interest are and their institutions and positions.
It may also be useful if you poke around the MCC Scholars site to look at, there is sort of like an e-library of where webinars in the past have been put there, that you can look at recordings of prior years webinars, so you can get kind of a sense of the content that's in the curriculum. Any additional questions?
We're happy to answer questions if they come up as you are digging into this. You can find Ollie's contact information and all of these links, and she can connect to us, and we do our best to answer any other questions that you have.
We look forward to receiving your applications, and I think we can give you 5 minutes back before your next meeting.
And as a reminder, the recording will be posted on the Aging Initiative website real soon. Thank you again for attending, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.